Are you ready for another episode of Network Podcast? Hello, welcome. I'm your host, David Mabee. This is the Network Podcast that brings you real talk to inspire, invest, and empower North Central Washington. Today's guest is someone who knows firsthand the most important parts of a business aren't always front and center. We're joined by Colleen Malmassari, the founder of Back40 Advisors, an HR consulting firm helping organizations clean up and optimize the overlooked parts of their operations, or what she calls their Back 40. With over 20 years in HR leadership, deep roots in agriculture, and a love for helping businesses and nonprofits thrive, Colleen brings a unique perspective that blends strategy, compliance, and heart. This conversation is full of wisdom, whether you're a founder, a farm owner, or anyone trying to build something behind the scenes. Today we are joined by Colleen. Colleen, welcome to the show. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Yeah, good.
Good morning. Colleen, though, the crowd, I don't know if you hear it, they're excited to have you here.
Awesome.
Trying to have a little fun with the podcast. So, Colleen, let's start with the name. What does Back40 mean, and how does it connect to your story?
Great. Thanks. Yeah. Well, first of all, naming a business, it is a challenge, right? And I knew I didn't want to use my name or use my initials. I wanted it to live beyond myself. And I wanted it to also be, without using my name, I wanted it to represent me and all the things that have brought me to this place in my career today. So when working with my brand identity guru, I'll call him Ron Skillstad of Fieldhouse Studios, we just started really dialing into the rural upbringing and rural roots that I have, longtime roots here in the Valley, in the Wenatchee Valley. And so Back40 is an ode to those farming backgrounds. And when you're talking about farming, generally farmers have a front 40 and a back 40. The front 40 is dialed in. It's where the best production is, where you take your tours, and it's the most producing. And then your back 40 acres are a bit feral. There's probably some rogue trees or broken pipes, and maybe even an animal that's living there that you don't want. And when I, through my career, getting to work in back office functions, it feels a lot like the back 40 acres. It's a little messy. It's unattended. It's wild. And so that's where I live, is
That's
helping
awesome.
The back 40.
So then starting a business and naming it is very hard, but also did you go down the names, and then is the website available? Is the social media available? Like what was that process like? I mean, did you have any struggles there? All of that?
Yeah, actually. And when we landed on Back40, and I still have my brainstorm list of all the different names we considered, and we were looking up, when we landed on Back40, of course, there's already businesses in Washington State that have a version of it. And so being creative as to, okay, how do we still keep within that? And that's really the tagline of Advisors came in, is to give us that unique identity as a business.
Yeah, I mean, just tough, right? I mean, now there's a million businesses. You think you got a great idea, and it's like you go look and you're like, oh, that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about your background in agriculture and kind of how it shaped your approach to business?
Yeah. So as I alluded to, I have deep farming roots. My great-great-grandparents, they homesteaded here in the Wenatchee Valley, technically now what is Dryden. And my great-great-grandfather, Archibald Smith, he went by Archie. He was a pioneer in so many different ways. He plotted some land in near the Wenatchee River in Dryden and started an orchard, and that evolved into many different things. He was one of the Upper Valley's first ditch walkers, which meant he literally walked the line of the ditch. And back then, our irrigation canals were made out of wood, and so it was easy for water to breach the breach and of course have loss of water. So that was one of his first jobs. He was also part of really a lot of the foundations of what is Dryden now. He donated land for the first high school and
Okay.
bought up acreage. And then, of course, the next generation start taking that ownership of farming, and went from apples to pears. We even have, at one point, our family discovered a rogue tree in our orchard, in the orchards, and it was the cameo apple, which was really popular for a while, but it didn't take off beyond our local markets. And so, in fact, I think it was going against the Gala apple at the time. So, a little bit hard to, yeah. So, I still have second cousins and third cousins that are actively ranching. And then I've had other family members that have been in cattle ranching and different aspects all around. So lived it. I was even as a kid, one of my sisters and I had a pig breeding business. We bought a boar and had a sow, and then we'd sell the pigs in the spring for 4-H and FFA activities, and then in the fall for some of the harvest parties. The pigs would be used for harvest parties. Yeah.
That's insane. So you've done all that in the past. Is farming a part of you right now? Do you do anything in the present on any of the farmland?
I'm not a commercial farmer, let's say that, but my husband and I, we do own acreage here in the Cashmere area, and where we live we're in Nahum Canyon, and where we live, there's not an abundance of water. It's one of the only canyons that doesn't have an irrigation canal, because at one point it tied right into the Wenatchee River. And then when Highway 2 was put into its location now, it severed the canyon from the Wenatchee River. So that natural irrigation canal dried up over the years as the water tables have changed. But so we're mostly with our acreage using it for pasture grazing and trying to restore it and make it as healthy as we can, and really just in sustainable practices, no tilling, trying to keep the carbon in, all of those things, where it's more of a hobby farm at this point.
It's crazy to think, because that just makes me think. I mean, we live in a high desert, so like how important water is, and how like turning the faucet off in one little spot, like it could just destroy a lot of things.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And when I lived in the Yakima Valley at the beginning of my career, oh my gosh, that was so apparent. If there was an irrigation canals, there just wouldn't be the agriculture that there is going through that valley, because it's, of course, as we know, a bit more south and even more desert landscape.
Yeah, insane. So to switch gears a little bit, why do you think the Back40 concept has resonated so strongly with your clients?
Yeah, right. It's fun. It's fun, right? No matter the industry, it doesn't have to be an agricultural industry that understands that relationship of a back 40 and a bit feral and wild and needing some attention to any industry. We're always naturally in commerce focused on our production, our front production. And so generally our back offices have traditionally, not always, had the least investment, either from technology or personnel or just sophistication of systems. And so having to know, how do we give lift there so that we can do the big parts of the financial reporting and just getting information to decision makers, that all resonates.
Right. I imagine it starts the conversation off a little better too. I mean, you're an HR consultant, not always the funnest conversations, I'm sure. So like the Back40, you're like, hey, it's a little more fun. Let's have a little bit more fun with this. So good on you. I mean, I'm assuming like some of these conversations are tough, so bringing a little fun into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been in the unique situation to see the worst and the best in a lot of ways. And I don't take that for granted because it can be very it can be a very sensitive place. And I learned early on really to be that trusted advisor for those, not only the fun parts of the conversation, but also the difficult parts.
Right. So as you're starting and you're shaping Back40 Advisors, what inspired you to start your own HR consulting firm?
Great question. I This has been in my mind for a while. So when my husband and I were looking to relocate back from the Yakima Valley, we started our careers in the Yakima Valley. We had our first home. We started our family in the Yakima Valley, and after 15 years, when with aging parents and other parts of our lifestyle calling us here to the Wenatchee Valley, it was in my mind of, okay, am I at a place where I want to be my own boss? Luckily, I didn't act on that at that time. I'm a pretty tenacious person, and I think moving communities and my husband and I, luckily I got a job here in the area, but we started new careers. My daughter starting school and building a house. Starting a business would have been just that extra part I didn't need at that phase.
Right. But would you say now that you've been through it all, I'm assuming there's no right time to start a business, right? You could always find an excuse. So what was that final like little
Absolutely.
nudge?
Yeah, absolutely. And I even took the safe way to get here. My first position when we moved back to the Valley in 2018 was I got to join the Stemilt team in their HR department, and I worked with them into the beginning and middle of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic. And in 2021, had the opportunity presented to me to join a CPA firm to start that practice of an HR consulting practice. So I didn't take this self-employment route right away. I still was like, ooh, am I ready? And so getting to do it first within the confines of a CPA firm helped in a lot of ways shape what I'm doing now and understand better of how I want to come to the marketplace with the skills and resources that I have to share.
Super smart. So you found a way to turn your dream into a reality, but found a path that wasn't so like abrupt. Like, okay, I quit today. I got no money. That's awesome. You found a way to like.
Yeah, some of it, it wasn't directly like that, but it was more like, yeah, let's see if, because there's a lot of advantages of joining an employer, right? They already have established brand. They already have clients. Especially in a CPA firm environment, they already have clients. They already have all the overhead that's part of a business. And so then I could plug in to those systems already developed and then use my skill set as an added service to their already existing clients and future clients. So that was more appealing. And plus, the ability to potentially scale quicker with those resources. I could stay at that higher level of consultation instead of what I'm doing now, which is wearing all the hats in the business.
Oh yeah. Well, working in a nonprofit, I get that. Like pretty small team, so we wear a lot of hats as well. So, anything else with working with those large scale companies that kind of helped you figure out your niche or like kind of your way to do your business?
Yeah, so I working with those large scale companies was really exciting in different ways. So both of them, I worked with the Borton family in the Yakima Valley, which works a lot with the Geber family. Not many people here in the Wenatchee Valley are as familiar with the Bortons as they are the Gebers. So I tend to use their names in tandem, and different styles of between the Borton family and the Matheson family of how they run their family run corporations that are very large scale. And so I got to work on a lot of fun projects and give some lift to those departments and essentially to the employees that are working for those companies. And that helped really in those times. It helped really with my acumen of HR, because
Right.
prior to that, I had been only focusing really on financial accounting type skills. And so to then have the opportunity to start really honing in on my HR skills was a great time.
Oh, that's awesome. So then, as you're doing that, does that kind of give you what's your passion now about who you work with and kind of why? Do you have like a specific group you target, or kind of how did that form off of that, or who do you target to work with?
Yeah, I really enjoy working with small to medium-sized businesses. Not to put any shade or anything on the big, large corporations, but those small to medium-sized businesses, and that also ties back to a lot of coming up with my brand and those rural upbringings and channeling my former generations of entrepreneurs in my family that were creating things with their own hands and growing the livelihoods for their families and their communities. And that really is what draws me to the small to medium sized businesses. So generally under 250 employees. And usually in those sizes, you may not have one person that's designated to human resources. You might not be at that place, or you might have one person that wears a lot of different hats, and they need some extra resources because they're a department of one, and they just need that extra lift.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we're getting into that, what are some of the common gaps and kind of smart fixes working with those smaller back office challenges you see with the smaller businesses?
Yeah, I'm very much an HR practitioner in the operations. I won't identify as a executive coach or training and development, but the style in which I do operate generally offers a lot of education, because that's the reason why you're calling on a consultant, an outside party. And so one of the things that is not very fun in HR operations is documentation and documenting policies and processes, but it gives so much clarity. And I follow Brene Brown, and one of her sayings is kindness is clarity. And so if you can, or clear, being clear is kind. And so if we can be clear in our expectations of our employees and our business practices, then we're going to set those employees up for the best success, because then they're going to have outlined expectations, not only in their job description, but also in your manuals, your employment policy manuals of conduct and behavior.
Right. That's a good, powerful quote there. The clearness part there. So, how do you help organizations align their HR practices with their mission? Is that part of that deep dive, and kind of what's your process with that?
There's no template, right? Because every everyone approaches it differently. And of course, your missions and your visions and your goals are different. And so having those direct conversations as to what are we trying to achieve. And I understand a lot of the times we don't know in the beginning, or we don't know what we don't know. So asking questions to get that clarity and that scope defined. And then we start layering in with workforce practices of how are we going to then fold in employees to help meet these goals and meet ultimately your mission and your visions.
Right. So then I'm assuming also at this level, there's a lot of times probably not a budget for this until after they, get rolling with you. So do you have any like low cost, high impact sort of changes that you can make early on with them? And then how do you shift that up to like them thinking about like they need to invest in this HR part of the company?
A lot of the times where I come into play is in just that capacity is we don't know where to start. We know it's not working. We know that there's frustrations with employees or there's a hot ticket. Right now we have an employee matter that is really distracting from us being able to meet our day-to-day goals. And so I can then come in with tools and resources and expertise of how to address those. I always offer to new clients a free 60-minute consultation to get started to really talk about those. And hopefully by the end of that, I'm giving some quick action items that they can act on to try to address that the item that's at the top of their list.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely start generally with my clients on an hourly type basis until we can define and scope out that what's really needed, and then get into either projects or an ongoing type relationship.
Yeah, it makes me think. I was at the cyber meetup yesterday, and they were like, the cheapest time to invest is before the attack happens. So like in cybersecurity, you're getting attacked, but I imagine that translates to HR too. Like if you're already dealing with the problem, it would have been cheaper to have you come aboard and kind of put policies in place that wouldn't lead to a bigger thing. Is that fair assessment?
Absolutely. And in small to medium sized businesses, there's so many things trying to they're vying for your dollars. There we go. There's so many different things vying for your dollars. And so do I really need to place emphasis on human resources? Is that more of because for so long human resources has been viewed as a soft, non-strategic partner in a business. And these days, not only is our newer generations coming into our workforce demanding it, so is our employment laws. You can't be anymore really a generalist in many of our different functions. I mean, we see that outside of human resources, but it's just as applicable to human resources. And so if you're also tasked with operations and future strategy, how are you finding capacity to address the personnel and the human part of your business? And if they're not in sync, you're not moving forward.
Yeah, and you mentioned the state policies. Wasn't there a bunch of state policies that changed this year that make probably an HR person or someone who knows what's going on like necessary, or like you should have that conversation because some serious changes came down? I'm not sure what they are, but I know that's part of the reason why our nonprofit talked to you in the first place. So I don't know if you could give a little bit of background on that and maybe help out a small client here who might be watching this.
We're just now coming out of Washington State legislation session, and there's several bills that have been passed and waiting for the governor to sign. May 17th is going to be a day for watching, as well as several others. So I'm right now, I'm definitely watching what's coming out of that, what's going to impact the workplaces. And that's just in the state level. We also have federal changes, of course, with the change of presidential administrations. When we change presidents between parties, we've seen in the last few years a bit of a yo-yo between some of the rules where they tighten up or relax, and so that, of course, has impact onto policies and how we classify work relationships, not just solely employment, but contractor relationships, volunteer relationships. All of those get impacted by different regulatory changes.
Right. And so on your website, you have I think the Almanac or newsletter. Can people stay up to date with what's going on by the Almanac, or also you have a resources tab? Is that something somebody could tap into free and kind of get some more information and then decide if the next step would be talking to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I try to really be thoughtful as to what is not only my clients that I'm working with, but the community that we're operating in. What are the impacts that are coming their way? Even if they've heard them before, sometimes when we revisit different rules, there's new takeaways because our business is now in a different place. And so I have the Almanac, which again is a fun play on that farming background, but it's a quarterly newsletter that gets pushed out to anyone that is signed up to be on that mailing list. And then the resources page is at least monthly. I'm putting up an article of different things to think about. Being on my social media, I'm also sharing different topics that way as well. So there's different ways that I'm trying to share out information that are tangible, small, bite-sized things to focus on.
Right. I guess just give me the social media call out here while we're talking about it so they can tune in, or they can tune into your website too. Maybe throw that out right now as we're talking about this.
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and we are at Back40 Advisors in some format. My website's back40advisors.com, and the 40 is a number. And it's just so everyone knows that part. You don't have to spell it out. I did secure that domain, though, as it's typed out just in cases. So you'll get routed to me no matter what. But
SEO strategies right there.
Yeah, which is a whole new world that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, as we're talking about having to know everything and do everything. That's a whole nother talk. Well, as we start here wrapping up, we have a little segment where we want to inspire, invest, and empower our listeners. So what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone just kind of starting up to clean up their back 40?
Be curious is always my go-to. So going back to that farming analogy in the back 40, think about a broken pipe. You know that there's water on the surface of the ground that shouldn't be there, but how big is that break in the pipe? Where is it at? And so getting curious about digging it up and what tools are you going to need to dig that up to unearth it. Same thing for your HR practices, is getting curious about what seems to not be working. What is it that I want to try to achieve? What kind of investment do I want to put into this? That's really important as you're thinking about this, is because there's a lot of things that you could address, but what's the investment? And then we can build out phases as to meet those individual needs.
Right. you say investment, but I also think you have to think about what are the consequences. Like if I don't do this, like money, time, prices, all that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
just add on to that.
yeah, I have conversations more so in the nonprofit, or excuse me, in the for-profit world. I'll have conversations with business owners that are a little cantankerous, where they'll say, "Well, the government's not going to run my business," and I'm not here to tell you how to run your business. You've hired me to help with bringing you the facts and the information, and then helping you determine, as a business owner, what level of risk do you want to take on, and what does your budget have?
Right.
And so then we can craft the plan.
Right.
I know in nonprofits, it's not always the same, right? We have a different level of governance that we need to adhere to. And so having those conversations in some ways, though, of what is truly feasible to do.
Right. And literally you're the referee. You're not the rule maker, right? You're the one coming in saying like, hey, that's not right. Like this is the rules. So on the investing side, what's one skill or mindset you're still honing as a business owner and a consultant?
It's really in the technology part of it. As we're talking here in North Central Washington Tech Alliance, I know this is at the heart of what you guys are talking about. There's so much cool technology happening, especially as a society, we're about to enter into a tech super cycle, right? With either artificial intelligence, which we're starting to see through the different GPTs and different other AI agents that are helping us in our back office work, as well as our front office or our front operations work. But not only in the artificial intelligence, there's also going to wearable devices and biotechnology. And so I'm a Generation X. I'm right at the end of the X generation. And so I'm the last of the analog, if I'll say that. And so I've always had to be an adopter of technology. And I will say that's the one area that I'm continually striving to consciously stay alert to is what's coming out. What are the tools? What is the price point? What can we use to leverage and help give lift to our employees? Because we're starting to work at a pace beyond human scale.
Right.
So how do we use technology to help make sure that we're continually able to stay at the area of where we can use our human intelligence and let the AI and the other technologies take over those clerical, non-critical, human-centered places of the workplace.
Right. I'm a Gen Xer, also late. So we have, I think, unique perspective because we went through analog to digital pretty fast, digital super fast. Like the new generation is just used to digital super fast. But I remember like three-way calling, answering machine, going to cell phone, going to pagers, like or pagers, cell phones, like it's crazy. So yeah, I agree with you there. I think we have a unique perspective, and I'm glad you can share that with your clients. What do you feel like you have a superpower when it comes to helping your clients?
My superpower is I'll say it in a different way. What makes me unique compared to some of my peers? And I attribute it a lot to the beginning of my career when I was focusing on working towards my CPA license, my Certified Professional Accounting license. I started my career in a CPA firm in Yakima, and I was auditing, financial auditing. I was preparing income tax returns. I was doing cash to accrual and all the different accounting things. And I I learned through that process I wasn't as passionate for financial math, because at the end of the day, it balances. I got real curious when I was working with my clients about the people math that doesn't balance.
Oh, wow.
Really ever. So I think
great way to put it.
yeah. So my superpower is being able to take a human problem and then add in that business accounting part of it and drill it down to a number or an analysis,
Right.
and a range of risk, going back to that conversation of risk, of being able to then present that to a decision maker, a business leader, to make those decisions best for their business.
That's awesome. So just closing up here, do you have a favorite Wenatchee Valley spot to recharge or do your best thinking?
I do. It's my own back 40. So as I mentioned, my husband and I, we have acreage, and we have a 40-acre parcel that sits up on the hillside of a canyon wall. And we've been really fortunate, especially this spring when the super bloom. We had our own private field of balsam root and lupin. And so a lot of the times, if I just need some space, I'll take a walk up into the hill and just have some time up there. That's
awesome. Well, Colleen, thank you for joining us today and giving the barn door, or so to speak, look into what it really takes to run a business smoothly and sustainable. So whether you're running a ranch, a nonprofit, a tech startup, your story reminds us that investing in the less visible parts of our operations can pay off in big ways. So to learn more about Colleen's work, is it Back40, BACK, the number 40 advisors.com?
Correct.
All right. And then you can see her name on the screen. So look for her on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe to the network on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find it. And also, we'll see you next time here with more real talk to inspire, invest, and empower right here in NCW. You've just tuned in to Network Podcast. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you on the next episode.